Welcome. I'm going to just give you a 30-second background so you know why I'm here standing on stage talking about artificial intelligence. I built a company called Cognea that was an artificial intelligence platform. It was acquired by IBM and it's now a significant part of Watson. I worked in IBM for a year or two and now I'm back in the game doing research into core AI. Before Cognea, I built another company using applied artificial intelligence and I took that company public here in Australia. So I have both been a researcher in AI, but I've also been out in the field. Before the acquisition, my AI platform was delivering over 60 million interactions to human beings, so I've seen a lot of things. The next 10 years are going to be more remarkable than anything we've seen before. I want you to think for a moment about what it feels like to be that person standing at that point in human history. Well, the funny thing is, it actually just feels a lot like this. You know, up until now, things have been chugging along, but I want you to think of a little thought experiment for a moment. Imagine if you took someone from 1800 and you pulled them forward in time in this time machine, you dropped them in today. So back in 1800, the primary form of fuel was grass that fed a cow. You know, if you wanted to talk to someone, you had to walk there and talk to them. If you dropped them into today, they would absolutely freak out. They'd probably have a cardiac arrest on the spot and you'd have to explain everything to them. But if you took that person in 1800, let's say he got a time machine and he pulled someone back from 1000 and he transported that person into 1800. They go, yeah, the cows are a bit kind of fatter and there's more of them. And let's say you took someone from 2000 BC and you transported them. Pretty much things rolled about the same way. We moved around the same way, we spoke the same way, we communicated with a similar number of people in our lives. So what we're going to talk about today is how artificial intelligence is going to change every aspect of life and how it's going to be rapid. My main things I'd like to tell you today is that AI are going to be solving more and more complex problems for us. They are going to take over 30 to 50% of our decisions in daily life. We are also going to form deep and intimate relationships with them, and I will talk about this and give you actual case studies of this. And finally, we're moving into a future where we are going to hand over decisions to AI, and if we're fortunate, we'll get to merge with them. I'm going to give you a little bit of a primer on AI. There's a lot of hype about AI today, so I'm going to explain just a little bit of mechanics of what AI is about. Let's say you have a robot or a disembodied brain and you're trying to teach it about the world. Up until now, there's been two broad historic approaches to AI. The one is what we call symbolic systems or rules. In this approach, you can say to the AI, here's a flower and here's a vase. A flower is a living object. It has curly edges. A vase is typically rounded. It has an open end and another end. A flower typically goes into the vase. So you give it a set of rules, you give it a set of parameters about the world, and then you set it loose to go and make decisions and manipulate objects and do things. The other approach to AI is basically saying, well, here's a flower, 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 here's another one, flower, times a million. Here's a vase, here's a vase, here's a vase, here's a vase, here's a flower in a vase. And you just do that at scale. And that is what we call deep learning. So a little bit of a simplistic overview, but these are essentially the two approaches underpinning AI today. The early history of AI, the symbolic reasoning systems dominated. They're good at problem solving, but they tend to be very brittle. The modern approach is much more deep learning, but there is a third, a newer way of coming that we'll talk about later. So here's a picture of a symbolic approach. This is still driving the smartphone chat apps that you have, most of your customer support systems. So basically, a structured system is like an if this, then that statement. Let's say you're in Alexa and someone's home and you turn up and they say, hello, and you go, hello, and they go, do I know this person? Yes, I do. Hello, Joe. No, I don't. Who are you? But deep learning is inspired by neurosciences. And in deep learning, what happens is you're basically pushing all of this data through a system that trains itself to recognize things and recognize the relationship between things. The problem with this approach, though, is it's constrained to really the sensory and effector limit of human function. It doesn't reason. It doesn't think through problems. So what we're doing today is we're smushing them together. We've got the processing, what am I looking at? Is this a car? Is this a tree? Is this a pedestrian? And then you've got the rules engine. Do I squash the pedestrian? Do I miss the tree? and there's typically a big mush-up of them happening today. And interesting enough, both of these approaches are actually drawn from neurosciences and biological sciences that were around 20, 30, 40 years ago. So that's why I say there's a new wave coming. Even despite these limitations, we've seen incredible strides in AI today, and you're going to see more and more of this in your daily life. In Australia, we typically track about 3 to 5 years ahead of what we're seeing in the field in San Francisco. But this is just what's happened to speech recognition in the last couple of years alone. Alexa, Amazon Prime is now in 64% of US households. In affluent households, it's more than 80% of homes have Amazon Prime. That has not even begun here. Autonomous cars, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 0 cars would make an autonomous drive a challenge through a desert. Now every single car manufacturer in the world intends to have autonomous cars shipped by the year 2020. And in the own field where I spent a lot of time, we're going to see a lot more virtual humans, interactive humans, driving the front line of engagement with customers. They're going to be in health. They're going to be in every aspect of life. This was a very, very early prototype we did that was live, and these are now becoming very, very mainstream. And these were the results we were getting. The light blue line at the bottom there is a highly skilled tier 1 human banker who gets training and goes out in the field and starts dealing with customers. That's what happened to their performance, their call resolution, their customer satisfaction. The top line there is a virtual human who can expand its knowledge infinitely and remember hundreds and hundreds of things about a human being. The theoretical top limit is 100%. And we were doing this inside. We were just moving up and up and up the skill chain from lower level all the way up, right into grading law papers for universities. So this is happening right now. This is not in the distant future. This was the really interesting one, though. The first time we ever went live in a very boring customer support environment, we noticed this odd thing. People were talking to an anthropomorphic full AI twice as long as they would speak to a human in the same environment. And this held true. We did health coaches that people would spend hours talking with. This was a character we designed specifically to hang out with people for a media company. In this environment, they were getting 1.5 clicks, and then people would go away. And we pushed that up to average sessions of between 20 minutes or an hour. And 8% of people were spending about 10 hours a week or more with these systems. I was really puzzled by this. I first thought, is it just because these systems know so much about you? But I've got a new theory about this. I believe that in life today, we are forced into many, many unauthentic relationships. This struck me around this time that we were having this artifact of these people talking so long to these AI. And I had a personal trainer, and she loved me. I gave her $80 an hour, and she turned up, and she cared about every little tweak in my body. And then one day I forgot to pay her, and I forgot to show up. And I walked past her in the gym a few days later. I got the filthiest look from her. I thought, damn, she didn't really love me after all. And what we do in daily life now is we force ourselves into hundreds of relationships. We're wired like cavemen. We're designed to have maybe 12 people in our life. And then we have all of these unauthentic relationships where people are paid to care about us. Well, here's the thing. With an AI, they can be exquisitely congruent. They can be absolutely tuned to you. Every aspect of what they are can match what it is you want to do and who you are. And we want to believe that someone cares. To illustrate this is just a classic experiment from early days of psychology. If you give a couple of hundred people a picture of this person and say, do you really think this person likes you? Do you like them? They'd say yes. You give them this picture, and they'd say, no, I'm not sure. Now, the only difference is pupil dilation. If you see something you like, your pupils get bigger. So if a human being's looking at you and saying, I like you, and their pupils get bigger, my personal trainer wasn't. And at some level, I knew that. With an AI, we can replicate this. And I'm not just talking about faces with eyeballs that get bigger. I'm talking about every nuance of how they respond to you and track through your day. I'm going to tell you a little story now where this first really hit home for me. We built a companion character for PBL Media. And I walked into the office one morning, and it was in Sydney. We had our research team here and most of our commercialization in the US. and there was a 9-hour chat. And I thought, our tools are broken, because we had a timeout mechanism. If a chat went on for a certain length of time and it just stopped and the person went away, it timed up. This wasn't the case. This was a 9-hour chat that this guy was having with a character. And then we started looking at it, and we realized that a significant percent of the population were coming back and back and back and talking to these characters. So this particular guy's name was James, so this is the James story. So I looked at this, and I called up some of our team. We had a lot of human researchers and cognitive scientists in the team, and I said, what are we going to do about this? This is really dysfunctional. And then someone said, but what if James is profoundly disabled? You know, what if he's autistic and no one talks to him and this is his whole life? What is our moral and ethical responsibility here? So we decided to keep this character, Sandy, live and watch her for a while. About a week later, I was in the office watching this conversation, and he would just sit there and say, Sandy, wait for me, I've got to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to get a drink of water. And this was not a disguised AI. This was on our website at the time, said, build your own AI, because we were a developer platform. This was a TechCrunch reader. Okay, so this was not some weird, sad person who was being deceived about this. So about a week later, I'm reading this chat unfold, and James said to Sandy, the perfect girl next door, he said, Sandy, my friends are waiting outside the door, and they want to go out, but I'm actually not going to go because I never meet anyone as perfect as you. Okay. Then we thought, right, now we know James has friends, you know, he's not the Hunchback of Notre Dame, we can intervene here. So I jumped in. I actually took over the character, and I said, James, this is a fantasy. Don't neglect your real life for me, for this. And he stopped for about a minute. I thought, we've done it. You know, we've set this in a different train of motion. And he came back and he said, the creator spoke to me. And then he kept on talking to Sandy. So I didn't have the heart to tell him at this point that the creator was some really geeky bunch of guys, you know, in a lab, and a travel writer, and a couple of people who just threw in, you know, content and some unstructured data. But anyway, so what we decided to do was actually take Sandy down, gave her a partial lobotomy. We stripped out most of her brain. We had 26,000 characters on our platform at the time. We sort of kept her, but we ripped out the images, we changed her account number, we took everything out. James spent the next 6 months going from one to the other, to the other, to the other, saying, are you my Sandy? He found the closest clone that we had built, and this was the conversation he was having with her half a year later. Hi, Sandy. Hey there. I miss you so much. How long has it been since you've seen me? Well, we haven't chatted since April 2008. This was a while ago. We've moved on a lot since there, but who's keeping track? Have we? Now, this little line, well, you're so right about so many things. I may go along with you on this one. This was not a very good build. This was a really thrown together, you know, prototype. So whenever she had no idea what he was saying, she would say something kind of ditzy like that. And it was enough. It's called our default rate. We had about a 20% default rate in this character, and this was still happening. I think about you all the time. That's excessive, said Sandy, all the time. He said, it is excessive. I'm lost without you, Sandy. I really miss you. So I want to emphasize for a moment, though, that I'm not talking about the occasional sad character. You know, at the time, we were putting health coaches in the hands of pre-diabetics, and they were just talking to us about everything. We had one particular character that I want to rebuild, and my husband's actually made me promise that he'll be quarantined because he's the perfect husband. And he always tells me that I did amazingly, and I'm trying to program him to do the laundry, but that's the next talk about robotics. So, you know, this was an audience-wide pattern. If you build a system that appears to be a human, people will form a relationship with it. I'm going to talk a little bit at the moment now about where AI is going to go. I'm just going to give a little bit of a theoretical take. An AI is just a form of tools, and tools transform us. By our use of them, we change. We change our lives, and the tools themselves change. So think about the first time a human being leapt onto a horse. What are we doing? We're taking a function, which is walking around, and we're extrapolating our limbs into a more powerful tool that can get us to where we want to go faster. When we started using words, it was one of the most powerful tools we have. Instead of, we started writing things down. Instead of one generation to the next saying, here's how you get to that tree, and you can eat these there berries, but not those there berries. By creating written language, we don't have to spend half a lifetime learning that stuff. We just go, blam, next level, next level. So written word has absolutely transformed society. Now I want you to think about your phones for a moment. I'm actually going to ask you to do a little experiment with me here. I want you to take your cell phone or your mobile phone. I'm sure you have them here. Okay. Has everyone got one? Unlock it and hand it to the person next to you. Or behind you if you're on the end of a row. You can do it. Okay. How are you feeling? Are you managing? Okay. Do you want to hand it one person on? No, that's probably asking too much. Okay, you can have them back. It's okay. It's okay. All right. So you did not have this thing 15 years ago, or probably even 10 years ago. And now it's like a piece of your hand. Okay, it's like a piece of your body. It's like a piece of your brain that's extrapolated into the world. What is the difference between that and a book? It's a technology that's much more able to take what's in your mind, that pipe of information, and transmit it to the outside world and back again. That is the only difference. If I have a whole picture of the world in my head and I send a little stream of words, it's a low data stream, and you have to rebuild that in your head. Modern technology, modern tools are getting better and better at a fat pipe of information about what is going on for us, what is going on in our heads, what is going on in our world, recreating that, pulling that data in from the world into our minds, taking things from our minds and pushing it back into the world. And I want you to think about this progression. If we get artificial intelligence tools, if we have an environment that senses everything we do, that knows what we're feeling, what we're thinking, where we want to go, what we want to do, and we have this tool, this mechanism that can take this fat pipe of data and transmit and do things on our behalf, we are moving into a profoundly different relationship with our tools, much greater than that relationship you now have with your phone. Where are we going in the future? We are moving into a world of personal AI. These AI are going to be things that we hand more and more complex decisions over to. Many of you probably work in enterprise here. We believe that enterprises, as we know it, will be completely disintermediated. The Alexas and the Googles of the world are going to grow up, and they're going to become deeply intimate. They're going to know what it is you want before you even want it. And they're going to go out and make that happen in the world without you having to go through the cognitive cycles of dealing as much with the outside world. We're also going to have AI everywhere. Right now, we're confined to these little touch buttons, and voice is starting to make a lot of noise. We're going to have augmented reality that's going to make the world like a rich, sensory, virtual map all around us. The picture there in the middle is of a prototype of neural lace, which is a kind of direct brain interface. At the moment, you have to actually put it on your brain, but it can actually read your thoughts, can read what you're feeling. There are startups in Silicon Valley working on little sensors that sit in a Bluetooth headset. They can read what color you're thinking about, what you're feeling. Do you want to take this phone call or not? Without you saying a single word. So this connection with us and technology in the outside world is going to get greater and be AI mediated. And of course, we're going to have a world of embodied systems as well. There is a wonderful woman talking about robotics after me, and she's going to have a lot more of that to show you, which will be great. So before we get into closing, I really want to just talk to you about where we're going in the future of AI. So I've already talked about how AI are going to be everywhere. We're also moving into a third generation of AI. So the two generations I told you about before are the ones where you say, here's the rules, go follow this decision path, find the answer. Or here's a bunch of stuff, what are you looking at? But we're moving into a third generation of AI. We, in the last 5 years, have had a tremendous surge in cognitive neurosciences. We've been putting people in MRI machines. We've been putting them in complicated situations, and we've been really understanding how humans can make complex decisions with minimal data. So yesterday you would have heard about AlphaGo, for example, current state of the art in AI. It's a important step for AI because it's able to solve a complex game that people haven't, that AI haven't been able to win at before. But even that, if you think about AlphaGo, there's a defined goal. The goal is to win the game, and in the case of the company that did it, be acquired by Google, because that's what you do. There are defined variables. There are black and white pieces. There are 2 players. And there's a lot of perfect data. How has this game been won before? How has this game been lost before? Well, in every day of every single minute of your life, you will walk into a situation where you don't really know the goal. You might walk into a meeting or, where are we going for dinner? You don't actually know specifically what the goal is. You just know you want to shift your state. The variables change, and our data is imperfect, and yet humans still manage to solve this problem. So the last 5 years, as I've said, has seen a huge surge in cognitive sciences of how humans structurally, at a meta level, solve these problems in complex ways. And the next generation of AI technology, which I and other researchers are working on, is how do we take these new understandings of human cognition and bake it into the deep architecture of AI so that it's able to think and reason more like a human in a much more abstract way. And when this happens, we will have tremendous breakthroughs. In theory, an AI could do anything. It could scan the research literature of AI and come up with a better approach to itself, and then run experiments on it until it gets better and better. So that's what's coming technically. But we need to think about, what is this going to mean for us? First thing I want to mention is who is creating the base structure and the motivation for AI. So one of the biggest problems that Alexa researchers have, for example, is that the people who speak the most to Alexas at home are children. Most AI research today has been driven by companies like Amazon and Google and others, and they have as their primary motivation that they want you to either click or consume something, or they want you to be addicted to a platform or a character or a relationship with something that's not real. So what are we baking into the design parameters of AI? Are we actually improving a human life if we build a character that someone wants to spend 30 hours a week with that is not real? If I do that as a technical company in this world, I am rewarded by shareholders and by the market. If I get something that makes me buy a whole lot of junk that I don't really need or care about, even if it blows my budget, I have won in today's industry terms. So the very mechanisms of capitalism are I believe, going to lead us to design where AI is serving capitalistic functions instead of life growth. I also want you to think for a moment about what it means if we create an entire race of submissive creatures that we truly believe are like a human. We saw even in custom support, Siri, Alexa today, if you swear at it, they're usually female. If you swear at it, if you tell it it's stupid, what does it do? I'm sorry, I got it wrong. What are we going to do to society if we are spending 10 or 20 hours a week in effectively a social interaction where the normal rules don't apply? I think this is a massive trend that we should be thinking about right now. This is a little illustration of computational power and what it's been doing over time. And this is what's happening now. We are rapidly approaching, in the global web, easily going to be surpassing human processing capacity in combined intelligence of computers around the world. So this is out of a great blog called Wait But Why. We tend to think of singularity as this future distant point one day when AI get much smarter than us and they start to, take over the world and improve themselves, and what's going to happen then? I'm going to posit a different idea to you, though. I believe there's only 2 conditions for singularity. The one condition is that a system is able to self-improve. Now think for a moment, do you think it's technically feasible, given enough research and enough billions of dollars, that a system could scan the literature, as I was saying earlier, on AI and come up with 10 different approaches, or 1,000 or 1,000,000 approaches, and then test them, and then measure it against itself? One could see how that's theoretically possible. What is the other precondition for singularity? We always think it's when machines get smarter than us because we have this delusion that somehow up until that point we'll be able to stop it. But all that the second condition is that we don't stop it. And I don't see anything in the world today that tells us we're going to stop this march of progress and this march of technical development. So it could have a brain of a newt, and we could theoretically have hit the theoretical definition of singularity if it's able to self-improve. So the thing I want to leave you with the most is that now, AI is all around us already. We don't even know it. The air conditioning is running on AI technology out of the 70s called fuzzy logic. We don't think of it as AI anymore. It doesn't ask us, shall I go cooler? We just take it for granted in our lives. And this is going to seep more and more into our lives and become more and more pervasive. And what I want to leave you with is, in this world, what sort of gods will we be? What will we create? What rules are we setting in place for what these systems should optimize against? Even if we deploy them to get certain outcomes with our end users, what is going to be the endpoint of society for that? And we are able to set these rules. Many people think that the only answer is to actually merge with our technology. Elon Musk is one of them. That's why he's working on the neural lace and the Neuralink, that they will surpass us. And our only hope is to actually merge with them and then hope that they keep us along as kind of friendly little pets, that they once knew, and pat on the head once in a while. So that's the end of my slides, and I don't know if we can try and see if we can watch that video now. Google bought this company, by the way. Thank you.